Hey Age Lead Store fans, this is Bill Rice with another sales training video, and this week I'm responding to a whole bunch of questions that I've had over the last several weeks about when is the best time to call on various lead types. But I thought, even though we'll talk about that, what might be a little more insightful is a direct peek into my daily sales routine. We're going to cover all of that on this video. Okay, let's jump right in. Like I said, I'm responding to a whole bunch of questions that I've been getting around when is the best time to call various lead types. And I'll touch on that, but I think what might be more insightful and might even surprise you a little bit is what my daily sales routine looks like and the habit that I've established. Now, I've modified what we're going to take a look at on the whiteboard just slightly because currently I do a lot more B2B sales, and so my daily sales routine looks slightly different. So what I did is kind of refactor this routine to look more like my sales routine did when I was practicing loan officer, because I know a lot of you are insurance agents and loan officers, and so you're kind of attacking more of a direct-to-consumer market, and that sales routine looks just slightly different, but we'll kind of talk through the differences there maybe a little bit. But basically, this kind of routine will serve you well, and like I said, as I go through the daily routine, and I actually surprise you how I set things up to maximize my productivity and to make sure that I'm really optimizing my time, specifically on calls. So let's take a look at just an average scheduled day for me. And I've just lined it out like my calendar might look like. I try to actually use my calendar and block it out so that I kind of move through these in a very methodical way, and I end things on time, because it's really important to have a productive day that you're actually holding to your schedule. I've seen so many people that will build out their calendar, but it just gets blown away. They don't ever kind of pay attention to it. They run through the time blocks without any sort of regard or discipline, and I think this is really important. So I went into a lot of detail, probably more than you want to know, but I generally get up at 5:30 in the morning. I spend the first hour doing cardio, which for me is basically on the treadmill, and that actually is important to my sales routine. So we'll talk about that in a second. Between about 6:30 and 7, I'm getting the kids ready and getting off to school. I've got 2 younger daughters that are still at home, got 2 boys in college. So it gives me some time to spend with the kids, hang out, and get them off to school. Then between 7:30 and 8:30, I'm actually at the gym and doing in my case, I like to lift weights, and so always doing that from that hour block. This time right here in particular, I think is really important. No matter what you do or how much time you spend at it, getting your blood flowing and pumping, having a time to sort of clear your head. There's a lot of things that are kind of starting to percolate up during all this time, but generally I'm getting my body and my mental state ready to kind of tackle the sales day, and I think this is really important. At times in my life, I've let that slip away, thinking that sort of getting in earlier and doing things would actually make me more productive, and I've just found over time that it's important to sort of defend this time because it doesn't give you much leverage, if any at all, by sacrificing this time. 8:30 to 9, kind of getting in the office. I'm making the coffee. I have my breakfast here. I'm usually kind of starting to tool through some things. I might spend a little bit of time on the internet. Got to be careful not to get sucked in. Be careful not to sort of drift into your email. I will tell you that I'm going to peek at that in this time too. I'll probably peek at my email. Probably not the best practice, but it's important, I think, to just kind of survey things. So that's what I'm kind of doing through this half an hour. And then right at 9 o'clock, sometimes even a little earlier, I'm into my first call block. And so the way that I make sure that I'm productive on this is I already have my list prepared. I know before I come into the office, in fact, the night before, we're going to talk about this, I know exactly what I'm going to be calling in each of my call blocks. Those lists are prepared. I bring it up on my CRM and I just start hitting the click to dial, or I hit my dialer and I go. And so in this first 2-hour call block, I've actually broken them down, or I will break them down into half-hour sprints. And so in between there, so it's not perfectly 2 hours. You probably get an hour and 30 minutes or an hour and 45 minutes, but I'm kind of trying to break them down into half-an-hour sprints, getting up, walking around in between. I think it's really important to have a wireless headset, so you're probably moving around anyway, standing up while you're talking, or a stand-up desk. Whenever I'm calling, generally I'm standing up because I just like that. It just gives my voice more projection, gives me more strength, gives me energy. I like to be moving around. You sit in that seat, it starts to come through your voice, that laziness, that potential kind of soft, sort of boring, just starts to mellow you out a little bit. So anyway, during that call block, 30-minute sprints, taking breaks in between. I'm standing up pretty much the whole time. From 11 to 2, I think this is really important. There's a significant amount of time here, and I'm doing several things. But I think sometimes we forget about this time, but it's super necessary, and it will make you a better loan officer or a better agent. During this time, this is when I'm doing all of my processing, right? So if I need to check on loans in process, or I need to do things with my carrier or whatever, I'm working through my client's actual fulfillment process. So some of you are doing this yourself. Some of you will have assistants. Some of you will have a whole processing department. But in any of those cases, you're kind of checking on your files that are in some state of fulfillment. And this is super critical. I see so many people, they're trying to hit their quota and they're hammering on the phone. They don't have disciplined call blocks. They spend all day hammering on the phone, and they're letting their actual existing deals fall away, get messy, get destroyed, get neglected by some partner, third party, title company, realtor, whoever, right? This is a really important time. So you're looking at your existing clients, you're paying attention to your actual files and process to make sure that they're going to come through and they're going to land by the end of the month so that you get your quota filled. Also inside of here, depending on what that processing queue looks like, I will spend time on email follow-ups. And this is also the time when I'm optimizing my sales process. So I will know specifically what I'm going to be working on in there. I'll know what files that I want to work on during that time period. And if I don't have enough files right now, I'll make sure that I'm in there optimizing my sales process and my systems, or prepping out email follow-ups, maybe updating my email drip campaigns and that sort of thing. So this is kind of more traditional sort of work period. So I give a significant block of time to kind of do the work that's going to help me be more productive when I'm on the calls, or be more productive at getting my pipeline all the way through to closing. So this is a really important block of time. And then by 2 to 4, this is where I'm doing my follow-up client consults. So these could be people that are in processing that I need to talk to about various issues. Maybe I need some documents. Maybe I do some follow-up, or I've scheduled a time to have a more significant block of time, maybe to talk about their insurance needs in whole. I may be working with past clients that are potentially thinking about purchasing. So these type of calls, or this block, is actually for scheduled calls. So these are existing clients, or these are clients that we know we have a deal. We're just kind of working through the mechanics of it. So I call these, consults or consultations. These are more consultative calls. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that call, and the call is very predictable. I know exactly what the goal is. The client is scheduled to be there, and they're in the right mindset to get some work done. So I spend a couple hours there plugging in those appointments. This can also be a good time for you to schedule in kind of a late lunch or a coffee for partners and that sort of thing. So this couple hours here is for scheduled appointments for the most part. And I want to make sure that I have a block of time so I don't get interrupted all throughout the day and have my day busted up by a whole bunch of scheduled appointments that are just sort of randomly spaced out in such a way that I can't actually accomplish anything in a large block of time. So I shove everything into here. So if you ask to schedule an appointment with me, or you want to talk to me, or you get my Calendly invite to set up a call, it's probably going to be somewhere in this block, you'll notice. Then 4 to 5, I'm starting to lose some energy, probably, but I still want to be effective. I still want to be moving things forward in my overall sales goal. So usually in this hour, I'll build in some training. That could be me doing some reading. That could be me doing watching some videos. That could be specifically doing continuing education. So some sort of training in here, I want to make sure that's blocked in every single day. Your organization probably has certain training requirements. This is a good time to do that. Maybe you're attending a webinar, but there should be something that is actually developing you as a sales person, and plug that into your block. It will be an effective hour of your day. So this could move around. If I'm attending a webinar or something, I might have to shuffle this around, but I'm trying to build in some sort of training opportunity. And again, if you're training or you're watching a webinar or something, you can always get the playback or something, but it tends to be towards the end of the day. Again, this is where I'm starting to lose some energy. Probably not going to be as good on the phone. It gives me a little time to recharge. And then I want to be recharged and ready to go for a last hour sprint. And this is my commuting sprint. So you'll notice here, I'm scheduling my call blocks generally at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. And my logic there, or where I feel like I've had success because of it, is it tends to be when people are either winding down or they're actually in the commute. Some of my best call opportunities have been when people are on the road, they get that call on their mobile phone, and they're just sort of conditioned to pick it up. And so they pick that phone up, and so I get a good call, and they're on the road. So a lot of times they'll sit there and listen because they know, hey, I've got to commute anyway. And so there just seems to be something there that just mentally breaks down that barrier a little bit and gives me an opportunity to have an extended conversation. And again, all my calls feel very casual and personal. They're not sort of aggressive. And so I think when people get my call and they happen to pick it up and then they start to listen to my openings, they're inclined to say, hey, he's a nice enough guy. I'll give him some time while I'm sitting here in the car commuting back and forth. So these blocks have been very successful for me. So that's generally where I plug them in. Then obviously, somewhere in here, I'm headed home, spending family time, doing dinner and those sorts of things. But my day isn't really complete. And this is just me. Some people block this a little more disciplined than I do. But I think, a half an hour to an hour throughout the evening. I'm not a big TV watcher anyway. And so anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, I'm prepping the next day and generally reading something that's going to help make me a better salesperson. And this could be a whole bunch of things. It doesn't always have to be sales. It can be a variety of different topics. It could be reading, it could be watching videos, just to make you more well-rounded, right? You want to know a little bit about sports. You want to know a little bit about the news. You want to know a little bit about different areas. If you work a particular region, you want to know a little bit about things around there. You want to be knowing what's going on in your community. So a lot of times this reading is not necessarily sales as much as it is just kind of making me a well-rounded person so that I can have interesting conversations, or I can pick up on little cues that I can dive in and talk a little bit deeper and create some affinity with whoever I'm talking to. And then certainly prepping my next day. I want to know, well, what list am I going to call? What are my goals? Specifically, what do I want to accomplish the next day, so that when I come out of the gym, get my breakfast and my coffee, and I hit this call block, I'm not thinking about it. There's no anxiety. There's no call hesitation or anything. I know what the list is, and I'm hitting it and going. That's the only way you can kind of get through that initial barrier, because that's really the hardest first step, is to hit that number for the first time, because you just inherently have some hesitation there. So you don't want to be thinking about anything here. You just want to get into it. On this side, I kind of scribbled down a couple extra notes as I was building out my day and kind of thinking what my routine is. There's a few other notes that don't really belong in the schedule, but are little tricks that have made me more efficient and made me more effective at certain times. So let me share some of those with you. I think personally, especially when I was a loan officer, and particularly B2C, Saturday mornings, for whatever reason, are gold. I would come into the office, or you can work from your home office, and I would dial between this kind of like 9 and 10. I wouldn't spend very much time. I don't want to waste my Saturday, right? But I saw it to be very effective. So at the beginning of that sort of morning call period that you're allowed to call, go ahead and hit that for an hour or so. It seems like people are relaxed. They're not really doing anything. They're willing to take a call, and they're willing to chat about things. You're not interrupting them at work. But be careful, just like you discipline your call blocks over here. Have a definitive cutoff time. You don't want to spend your Saturday just whiling away randomly, arbitrarily making some calls. So have a list ready and do that on Saturday morning if you want some additional kind of push through on your goal. Sunday prep. I spend a little bit of time on Sunday, and specifically what I'm thinking about on Sunday is I'm running my numbers. I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about your process or cold calling, because it is a volume and a quantity game. It's really important for you to know your numbers. Go through that funnel, know what your fallout rate is, and know what volume you need and where you are in that process throughout the month to make sure that you're hitting that sales quota that you need to hit. So on Sunday, I'm thinking about my numbers. I'm getting my strategy prepped for the week. This is another one. This is actually an app that I use on my computer and my phone. It's called Pocket. And so one of the things that I see a lot of times with sales teams and managing their schedules is they hop on the internet and then they get lost. They go down a rabbit hole. They start reading this. They think they're reading about sales training, or they're reading about something that's interesting to them, but they just kind of wander off and they end up spending hours looking at the internet. Pocket is a really great way. I may pop open an article and I'm just going to hit the button that stores it off to this app called Pocket. And I don't even read the article. I'm just like, oh, I saw something interesting on LinkedIn. I want to read that later. Boom, hit it on Pocket. I see something on the internet. And a lot of times that's what happens. You're maybe doing some prospecting. You're looking at LinkedIn, or you're looking at something else, or you're doing some research, and you start to wander off into these articles or this content that's interesting to you. Instead, I just save it into Pocket, hit that little thing in my browser, or even on my phone, and that way it's stored off into this application. And then in the evening, when I'm doing my reading, or in here when I'm doing my training, I very efficiently go through Pocket. And it's actually nice when it saves it off there. It's a nice clean article. It doesn't have all the advertising, and you can kind of really scan through quickly. So this is a really efficient way for me to do my reading and my learning. YouTube is my training partner. Remember I said how I was going to connect this back? So there's a couple of connected pieces here, right? So Pocket, goes into feeding this time, right? And then YouTube is my training partner. A big block of that cardio, obviously it's good for you anyway, but sitting on the treadmill, YouTube and training during that time is perfect. So I don't do anything here except watch YouTube. I don't listen to music when I'm training and that sort of thing. I'm listening to YouTube. Also, and this is kind of a side one, Audible is a nice thing. I read all my books almost exclusively on Audible, and that's what's in my ear when I'm lifting, right? So I don't do a lot of music and that sort of thing, so I can really maximize things with YouTube and Audible. And then this is the ultimate thing that's really important to remember here, and this is something that I learned years ago, but it's been so important. And a lot of times we set these lofty goals, but that's not actually what delivers success, right? Putting the big goal out there, it's good to have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's super important to have those, but the only way you're going to achieve them is to work on the habit. So I don't even break it down into steps, because sometimes you're like, okay, here are the steps I need to get from here to there, and those are things you need to do. But really creating the routines and habits and working on getting those down will ultimately just kind of deliver you success. So habits, cause success, not lofty goals. So working on developing very disciplined habits and things that you know will contribute to that ultimate goal. I actually spend most of my time perfecting the habits in here, not necessarily the steps to get to a goal. So hopefully all this has helped. To the question of when do I call, I like to call in the mornings and the afternoons. I don't really call in the middle of the day. I get my work done in the middle of the day as far as processing and attending to clients. So that answers that question. But ultimately, the question that I want to help you solve is understanding that you want to create some habits that are going to feed into and just carry you to your goal. Not steps, habits. So really work on those habits. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, would love for you to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notify button so that you'll get every single training video that we put out there. And as always, because you are driving the content here, put in the comments section any questions that you have about this video, or any questions that you have or ideas that you would like to see in future videos. Hope that you have a successful sales day. And as always, we'll see you here next week.